Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Premier League Phrontistery once more, quarter of the way through the season after this weekend's action. Quite a few talking points to discuss. I want to start with Manchester United and Burnley. Really an absolutely fantastic game considering it was a 0-0 draw, in all honesty. There's a whole host of points to talk about from that game. I want to talk about Middlesbrough, the Bournemouth game. I felt that was quite a surprise game. I really want to have a little look at Middlesbrough and Burnley because I think they're two teams who could do surprisingly well this season, in all honesty, considering maybe they were some of the favourites to go down in the end. And finally, I want to sort of take a breath and I want to analyse what has sort of gone on the first quarter of the season. I think we've sort of whittled down the title challenges to maybe 4, possibly 5 different teams. I want to have a look at the table. I want to have a look at maybe a little key player watch, who's going to be instrumental when it comes to really realising who's going to be a title challenger this season. If you enjoy the show, please go ahead, like, subscribe down below so you get the video a little bit quicker. Please feel free to ask some questions. I'm always more than welcome to answer and engage. And if you want to find me on Twitter and have a sort of more in-depth discussion on Twitter, I'm always available. And that you can find me with my handle, and that's Tommyaki. That's at TOMMYAKKI. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate all the help and support so far. Again, just thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy. So starting off with the Manchester United Burnley game, one question to ask: how good is Tom Heaton? Absolutely phenomenal at the weekend. Saw Garth Crooks mention he thought that he broke his arm with that save from Ibrahimovic's shot towards the sort of end of the game. And God, it was some save, wasn't it? It was like people have compared it to Peter Schmeichel, those like scissor saves where he's sort of flying up in the air to save it. And in all honesty, Heaton was absolutely inspired the entire game. He was absolutely superb, and without him, it would quite clearly have been something like 4-5, possibly even 6-0 in all honesty. Just time and time again, the captain came to his to save his side from what looked like absolute annihilation at points. Man United, they looked a lot better in all honesty this week, but still, those are the games you have to win if you want to be considered a challenger for the league. I feel sorry for Ander Herrera, but in all honesty, the way the game was going, I still didn't see, even if they had 11 men on the pitch, I didn't see them finding a way past Burnley at all. He didn't deserve to be sent off, but, I mean, there you go. Like I said, United looked a lot better. Statistically, they were by far the better team. Miles, streets ahead of Burnley. But you have to give some recognition of what is going on down in Burnley, in all honesty. Sean Dyche has that team playing their hearts out for him, for each other. And when you look at teams like Sunderland, who languish at the bottom of the league with 2 points on the board and just don't look like they offer any sort of real chance of survival, you have to really commend Burnley. Yes, they spent a fair bit of money. They broke their record twice with Stefan Defoe and Jeff Hendrick, and it's paying off for them. Defoe has been instrumental at times, and in all honesty, nobody thought they were going to go to Old Trafford and really do anything, to be honest. But with somebody like Tom Heaton in goal, with Ben Mee and with Michael Keane in defence, a real solid platform from which to build on. And you really have to give a lot of credit to the way that they battle for each other. That's the difference, in all honesty, isn't it? It's the same with Middlesbrough, as we'll discuss in a minute or so. It's all about, are you willing to wear your heart on your sleeve and play for the lads around you? And yes, Burnley are. Sean Dyche has instilled something in that team that's very hard to come by. For all the quality they perhaps lack, just their work rate, their determination is absolutely remarkable, in all honesty. And you've got to give a lot of credit to Sean Dyche because he's obviously the man who's fostering that within that squad, fostering that sort of identity of being like a real difficult team to beat. They make it hard for teams to play against them. But they undoubtedly have quite a lot of quality in that team. They're doing well. They're sitting in 13th place. They're sitting on, I think it's 11 or 12 points. And considering they were newly promoted this season, I think a lot of people probably thought that they were going to be languishing in the bottom 3 for quite a lot of the season. So kudos to them. They've really proved a lot of doubters wrong, in all honesty. And I like people like Sean Dyche. When he's interviewed, he mentioned before, I think that maybe it was his first or second spell at the club, I can't remember, but he said something along the lines of 100% is the bare minimum that I require from the players. He doesn't seem like he's one of those people who deals with attitudes. He seems like a great man manager. He has a very, I don't want to say simplistic because that sounds negative, but he really does have quite a simple plan for how he wants Burnley to play. He wants them to be solid in defence. He wants them to be sort of a very difficult team to break down, and they can catch a lot of teams on the break. They'll beat certainly 5 or 6 teams quite comfortably this season, especially at home. And I really think they're one of these teams that could turn into a Bournemouth, or they could perhaps turn into like a Southampton. I think they could come up and really establish themselves as a Premier League force, provided, of course, that they reinvest, and provided, of course, that they don't lose their players and Sean Dyche doesn't have an injury crisis or anything like that. But really, really impressed with the way that they've set up this season. More stress for Mourinho, of course. Comes with the job, unfortunately. Alex Ferguson created such a legacy at that club that you just can't afford to have a poor season. And I don't know what's going on with Mourinho. We all sort of thought it was a blip on the radar with Chelsea, but it seems to have carried over this season. He seems at times like a man who's lost the plot with some of his comments. But this weekend was it was one of those games, unfortunately. You would have expected them to come out and win 2-3-0 comfortably, but without the heroics of Tom Heaton and the sort of the passion and the desire of the rest of that Burnley squad, then it really would have been that. And could that have turned United's season around? They'll do well. They'll finish in the top 6, definitely. But is that enough for United fans? Probably not. As somebody who supports a team who historically has never done well, I'd be delighted with that level of consistency. I always am mind blown by the Arsenal fans who constantly bemoan 4th place, but when Sunderland, it's 4th bottom is what we kind of pray for every season. But I do understand it. I mean, you spend over 180 million on players, you expect an instant return. So more pressure ahead for them. Credit where credit's due to Sean Dyche and Burnley, and a real interesting way to kick off this week's episode. Another promoted team who are doing really well, better than I think a lot of people expected them to, is Middlesbrough. Absolutely fantastic chairman. As someone who's originally from the northeast of England, I'm no stranger to Steve Gibson and what a fantastic bloke he seems to be. Determined for the club that he loves to do well, and it took them a while after being relegated from the Premier League, but they're back and they spent wisely. They seem to have a real impressive young manager, relatively young manager in Aitor Karanka. Borough play some superb football at times, they really do, and it's a shame in a way that maybe they don't have the financial means to attract some higher calibre players who could really put into effect what Karanka expects, or indeed definitely wants, from his team. But that being said, the players they have seem to be doing very well. I think this season they're going to look for consolidation. They're going to look to be a Premier League team next year. And of course, the money that generates can propel them forward the season after, provided they spend it wisely. And I think I was reading a few articles, the Swiss Ramble, which is an absolutely superb footy blog, if you're interested in the finances side. I think they boiled it down and said something like £100 million goes to 20th place this year. So God only knows what sort of a mid-table obscurity. God only knows how that's going to financially aid teams like Middlesbrough if they can hold on for that sort of position on the ladder. And I think honestly the way they spend money, the way that they've developed a lot of their own talent and brought that into the team, again, another very impressive squad who certainly don't look out of place in the Premier League. Like I said, it was a fantastic win, but I think there's got to be some praise for Gaston Ramirez, who was a real linchpin of their success last season in the Championship. Seems to have continued that form. Obviously, we all know him from Southampton, and he was quality for a couple of seasons, had a little off spell, went away to Middlesbrough, has seemingly refound his form, and his first goal at the weekend was nothing short of superb. He picks the ball up inside his own half, beats 2 men, beats another man, cuts inside the box and rolls the ball bottom corner. Just composure, class, magnificent goal, magnificent solo goal. And then if you look at their second goal, Adama picks up the ball, a nice bit of skill, cuts inside, back post cross. So Adama, obviously a new signing this season. Back post cross for Negredo, another signing this season. God, I can't talk. And another signing this season, gets up at the back post, nods it back across goal for Stuart Downing, another new signing this season, and absolutely beautiful team goal. It was absolutely honest. It was fantastic to watch. But that pays testament to the way in which they've invested. Down Negredo, no strangers to the Premier League. Adama, his pedigree, he could honestly be one of the world's best players in years to come, in my opinion. His pace is just... It's hard to believe that somebody can be that fast with a ball at their feet. Clocked up I don't think it was this weekend, it was last weekend. He absolutely ridiculous speed. I want to say 32 kilometres per hour or something like that. It was a record for the Premier League. He's fast. He has tricks in the bag. His end product is where maybe he lacks a little bit, and maybe why Barcelona were kind of happy to ship him off for at least a few years. I hear he has a clause in his contract that enables them to buy him back for a reasonable price. But just how they've spent their money this year has been very, very impressive to me. And like I say, you get three signings who combine for that second goal, which seals the deal, in all honesty. And you have to be excited as a Middlesbrough fan. They've had a lot of struggle the last few years, and to see football like that, trying to play, I don't want to say the right way because there's no right way to play football, but trying to play a really sort of technical style of football, I would say, pass and move. It's what a lot of us like to see rather than hoof it up the pitch and hope for the best. Seeing Middlesbrough play like that and look very assured in the Premier League has really, for me, confirmed that the gap between the Championship, or the better teams in the Championship and the poorer teams in the Premier League, is narrowing season upon season. Sunderland, prime example. A lot of people thought they would have kicked on this year and found some mid-table obscurity that would have been more than welcomed by the fans, but unfortunately they haven't in any way, shape or form. They look like a team that are already relegated, unfortunately, with 2 points after 10 games. It's unforgivable, in all honesty. But look at Middlesbrough, 14th place, only 3 points from the relegation zone, but an impressive campaign considering a lot of people thought they would struggle. They need to keep that momentum going. They've found 10 points so far this season. We're a quarter of the way through. If they keep up this form, they're going to find that magic 40. I can see them kicking on, though, in all honesty. I think they'll have another good January window because they'll be relatively safe, and Karanka knows what he wants. And I can only see their season kicking on, in all honesty, unless they have a nightmare in confidence. But again, credit where credit's due. A fantastic performance from a club who really deserve their time back in this league. So again, once more, I'd love to know how you feel on the Borough game. I'd love to know how you feel on the Man United Burnley game. Leave me a message. Leave a comment below if you're so inclined to do so. And really, where I want to end up on the show, and I want to spend about 10 or so minutes talking about this. Looking at the table right now, I'd say on form, there are sort of 4, possibly 5 teams who are certainly going to challenge. And I really want to just go club by club in no particular order, in all honesty. Just want to go club by club and see which of those teams sort of have the pedigree or have the persona, the characteristics, the personnel on board to actually mount a serious title challenge. I'll start with Arsenal, an impressive win against Sunderland, but in all honesty, you would expect that kind of scoreline. Sunderland's capitulation, I already mentioned, is almost unforgivable, to be honest, but Arsenal did look good at times. Their first goal was something like 29, 30 touches in the build-up to it. How a 6-foot-plus giant defender like Lamine Kona gets beaten in the air by Alexis Sanchez is a question you have to ask, and Monday Night Football did a great little overview of what's going wrong at Sunderland, and just their defence looks very lacklustre with a real lack of concentration. But credit where credit's due, Arsenal were able, even conceding the penalty and conceding the goal 1-1, they managed to score 3 goals in the space of like 8 minutes, 6 minutes and something, I think, actually. And they do look good, don't get me wrong. Mustafi, although he made a criminal error at the weekend to allow Watmore in to win the penalty, he definitely looks like the sort of player that complements Koscielny very well. They really didn't look under a lot of trouble from Sunderland, in all honesty, and I think it's just one of those moments, a brief lapse of concentration, whereby he allows Watmore in behind to win the penalty. But overall, their defence looks superb. Koscielny looks absolutely tremendous this season, and I think that's one thing Arsenal have going for them. They seem to have really sorted out a crux of their team, which has been that central defence, in all honesty. Mertesacker has never looked totally convincing in that position. Neither is Paulista, who they brought in, Gabriel. He doesn't look like the kind of player who's really cut out to be a week in, week out central defender. And I think they've made inroads this season. I really do. If they can keep Sanchez and Ozil fit, they certainly have a chance. Do I think Walcott, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Giroud are replacements who are going to fire them to a title? I still think there's question marks hanging over that. I do definitely see them taking a top 4 finish once more. But if I had to gamble, if I was a gambling man, I would just say that they look a little bit too pedestrian at times, in all honesty, to be threatening enough to mount a serious challenge. We saw them crumble last season. I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but tells you something mentally within that team that there maybe is some fragility. Could Sunderland have held out and frustrated them? Very possibly. Better teams certainly will. But you never know. Arsene Wenger's one of those real bizarre characters in the Premier League where sometimes he seems to get it totally right and Arsenal play just absolutely beautiful football and it's like watching Barcelona almost at times. And then other times they look absolutely dreadful. So the jury is still out on them as title contenders. You can't write them off right now, but certainly question marks will hang over them. Move across London to their North London rivals, Tottenham. Harry Kane's injury, and in fact his poor form before his injury, is certainly a cause for concern. Vincent Janssen he scored a couple of penalties recently, but still looks a little bit rusty. He's trying to acclimatise to the Premier League. Heung-Sun Min looks superb, but seems to have tailed off a little bit the last few weeks. I think Pochettino's a superb manager, and I don't think you can rule out Tottenham by any means. However, I do think there's some question marks over whether or not they have enough quality in that team, especially in the final third. Do they have enough firepower to get themselves into a position once more to challenge? Again, question marks hang over their mental capacity for the job. After last season, they crumbled again when it was the 2-horse race and ended up in 3rd place, which was shocking in all honesty. And I think that there's just a few question marks. It's a very young squad. Although Alderweireld and Vertonghen look very solid, there's still some question marks over their defending. But I think Pochettino is one of these guys who can build something. And I think Tottenham really need to stick with him because I think he's one of those Sir Alex Ferguson-like characters, in all honesty. I think he can build a dynasty at that club. We all know Tottenham are financially very capable of pulling punches with the big boys. Whether or not this season is their season, I'm not 100% certain. But I'm sure we'll find out. Like I've mentioned a few times, January is going to be the real yardstick by which we measure teams' success or their chance of success. And I'm not 100% certain if there's enough squad depth, especially in that final third with Tottenham, to be able to keep up the pace, in all honesty. Moving on to Liverpool. Liverpool, to me, are the most interesting team in the Premier League this season. They look just on a different level at times. There are definitely serious question marks to be asked of their defence, although I do think Joel Matip is a great addition to their backline. Ragnar Klavan, not sure he's up to the job. Still, the jury's still out on Dejan Lovren. Klein looks good. The left-back position is very much eyebrows up in the air, raised at who's going to fill that. Moreno looked okay at times, but looks absolutely dreadful at others. Milner is by no means, James Milner, man, no means a left-back, but is doing a very admirable, stoic job of playing there and scoring a fair few goals as well, to be honest. But with Liverpool, it's all about that front three. It's all about Coutinho, Firmino and Sadio Mane. They can keep those gentlemen fit, and if those guys can keep playing that style of football they've played so far this season, offensively, you have to believe in them. And you look at the bench, and there's Daniel Sturridge and there's Divock Origi. I know a few people are saying, there's no plan B, but Origi's a big bustling lad, and so is Daniel Sturridge when he wants to be. I think he's scared of getting stuck in at times, but there's definitely options on the bench. It's not as if they have nobody. Their midfield looks pretty good at times. I think really their transition from front to back is what makes that team. They try to play a suffocating game against United, and what I mean by that is they try to hold onto the ball and play it slow and break United down. I don't think that's their strength, in all honesty. I think their strength comes from playing out from the back, bypassing a lot of the midfield a lot of the time, finding Firmino and Coutinho, or letting Jordan Henderson try and pick out a pass, or somebody else in that middle, And I think where they thrive is when they can play that fast, exciting brand of football where they can get those three attackers to just intermingle. They don't necessarily have a position on the pitch, in all honesty. They sort of intermingle, they move about amongst each other, they find space, and that's their strength. If teams can figure that out, they might struggle. I think Man United had that figured out. People obviously asking the question of should Mourinho play for a draw? Of course he shouldn't. Man United should be going to Liverpool and expecting to go out there and really try and win. So although United frustrated Liverpool and knew their game plan, it's poor form from Mourinho and United for me for not going for the win. But I think other teams will look at that and that'll be a barometer by which they measure Liverpool and think, okay, if we can frustrate them, if we can have two solid banks of four defenders, four midfielders, make it very hard for them to pick up enough pace to get on the front foot, then yeah, I think they might struggle at times. Then again, Coutinho is one of those players who can just pull out moments of magic at any given time. So who knows? Who really knows? It's all about keeping their front three fit, and it's all about being able to play the style of football, that gegenpressing style that Klopp wants. If they can keep doing that, they are without a shadow of a doubt in with a chance. Another interesting team so far this season, Chelsea. A couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, I would have said no. They looked very poor at times. Conte, like I mentioned last week, his switch in tactics to what seems to be something like it's almost like a 5-4-1, or it can be a 3-4-3, or it could be anything it wants to be. It's very malleable, and I think that really, really helps them. It seems to have made Gary Cahill more comfortable. David Luiz looks a lot more accomplished as a centre-back in that kind of system. So I think he's found something that works for Chelsea. You look at their bench, so much quality on that bench, quality throughout the team. But what has been the best thing so far is I think under Mourinho there was a lot of egos, and I think a lot of people sort of point the finger at Fabregas at times, in all honesty. And Conte doesn't seem to take any crap, does he? Fabregas has played this season, by all means. He's had game time, but he hasn't been a central figure by any means. Conte has trusted a lot of other players above Fabregas, including Nathaniel Chalobah, one of the many youngsters on Chelsea's books who seems to be getting a decent amount of game time at the minute. How do I feel about their loan policy? I know this is a little bit of a digression, but sort of the Chalobah thing brought it up in my mind. How do I feel about the youth policy of Chelsea? It could really help them in years to come, in all honesty, if the likes of Loftus-Cheek, Chalobah, and the other plethora of young loan players they have out there, if they can come good, then by all means, Conte is going to have a dynasty. But coming back to this season, I think this season the likes of Victor Moses and Marcos Alonso have brought a real workman-like quality to Chelsea. Much in the same way I spoke earlier on about the fact that Burnley want to play for each other, Chelsea seem to as well, and Fabregas almost seems to have been given the cold shoulder because it would appear that he's not so much a team player as a lot of people might have thought he was, or if he is, he certainly isn't portraying himself as that kind of player. So Chelsea, I think they have a very good chance of pushing this season. Might be just out of their reach this season, and I think they certainly need to strengthen in their central positions on the field. I think they need another quality central midfielder in the middle of the park, and I also think they need another quality central defender. I know they brought Luiz in, I know they've got Kurt Zouma, but you look at Cahill and John Terry, they're certainly not getting any younger, so they really need to replace some of the aging members of their squad. Hazard seems to be finding form, though. It's always a real cause for joy among the Chelsea fans. Costa, whether you like him or you hate him, has been a great player for them so far this season. And Batshuayi, if I haven't butchered that name, is another great player to bring off from the bench. He looks fantastic when he gets on, very lively, maybe needs a little bit more composure on the ball, but Chelsea look to have strengthened well this year. They look to have brought certain players from within and regenerated their confidence. And I think they'll do well this season. I really do. Again, we'll see after Christmas, but another team who have to be certainly in with a shout. And finally, we obviously have to talk about City. A real sort of bizarre run of form that ends with a 4-0 demolition of West Brom at the weekend. Obviously, West Brom hardly one of the teams of the season by any means, but certainly no pushovers. And the way in which City dismantled them, they looked absolutely magnificent. Gundogan looks to me to be one of the real players who can make a difference. if you can get Gundogan, if you can get De Bruyne, Sterling, and Aguero playing well, then you can boss the middle to the final third of the pitch. And if you can camp out in that area of the pitch and the interplay you see suggests that they can hold the ball up there and they can pass and move, you starve teams of any opportunity to hit back at you. And it just goes to show how well that works when you see players like Kolarov and Zabaleta and Fernandinho and Fernando sort of transitioned into more defensive positions. It's almost as if you don't need an out-and-out defence if your offence can be good enough to really starve the other team of any time on the ball. It's absolutely wonderful to watch at times. I do think City maybe need another season or two before it becomes something that is almost unplayable for some teams. However, I think Guardiola's the man to do it. Certainly, I don't think he's been found out. Every team has a little run, a little blip in the season. I think City have experienced theirs, but they've come out the other side able to find a game plan that really works. And what really makes me laugh, and sometimes I'm guilty of this as well, but when a player goes through a little sort of barren spell, and I'm talking about Aguero here, when a player goes through a barren spell, the media are so quick to get on the back. I've seen statistics, I've seen informatics, I've seen reports, articles, everything suggesting maybe Aguero's done, maybe he isn't the kind of player who fits in a Pep Guardiola system. And then you just watch him at the weekend, and the second goal was nothing short of world class. Alan Shearer even going so far as to say he's the only world class player in the Prem. You have to agree that he certainly is a world class player. Whether he's the only one's another matter. But he was absolutely wonderful at the weekend. He is the crux upon which City depend on their success. If he isn't firing, I'm not 100% certain who fulfills his role as the goal-getter. Iheanacho's great, don't get me wrong, but it's still going to take another few seasons for him to find consistency. And other than that, I don't really see any other striker, so to speak, who can fill that role. It's all about keeping Aguero fit. Like I said, though, Gundogan able to come in and add something new to that midfield, and just Nolito and David Silva and the interplay between them and Sterling and De Bruyne is just an absolute joy to behold at times. So those are my sort of five sort of picks for who's going to come into the running. Again, like I say, once we get to Christmas, I'm sure things will start to clear themselves up a little bit. But a quarter of the season in, 10 games in, the table is very, very tight indeed. There's literally a handful of points separating first and fifth. And it's really funny. Tottenham, in all honesty, didn't look like one of the teams who I would have mentioned in this today. And then you look and they're unbeaten this season. Nobody's beaten Tottenham, and they've beaten City. And they've maybe struggled the last few games, especially without Harry Kane. But they're unbeaten. So it just goes to show we have 5 real contenders for the league this season. So what I'd love to hear from you guys, if you get in touch on here through the YouTube comment section or via Twitter, I'd love for you to let me know, who do you think is going to win the league and why? Who do you think is going to be the team that is able to find that consistency and is able to really push on and make the title their own this season? Let me know. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear. Like I said, you can leave the comments in the comment section below. You can find me on Twitter, and my handle is Tommyaki. That's at TOMMYAKKI. Again, thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. I just love talking about footy in all honesty, and it's great to sort of go through this logically with an audience, in all honesty, with people who are willing to listen and engage. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, guys, please leave a little like, a little comment, and I'd love to hear you again, or at least hear from you again next week. So if you could tune in, that would be fantastic. I hope you all have a fantastic week, guys. Take it easy. Thank you.